Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Be me, 7 years old. Live in bumfuck nowhere, Texas on 30 acres of wooded property. Parents saved up money to build a cool house after having lived in a shack in the back of property for many years. Move into a new house. First thing they do is get me a bunk bed. Heck yeah. JPG. Sleep on top bunk for a while, then start switching where I feel like sleeping. Have sleep paralysis frequently when on bottom bunk. It's scary, but kind of cool sometimes. Always staring straight up at the board of the top bunk when it happens. I sleep on my side, but sleep paralysis happens on my back. Every time I figure out how to move, it wakes me up. One night during one of my sleep paralysis times, I find myself on my back, but with my head to the side. Looking at the other side of the room, bed is against the wall in a corner. There is a figure in between my bookshelf and TV stand. Had one of those tiny TVs with a VCR built in that we got from an old second-hand store that doesn't exist anymore one town over. Peripherals show two other figures in the room, but they are shadow. The one directly in my vision has a white face. Freaking out. JPG. Try really hard to move and I'm able to swing my right arm over. Fall out of bed. That arm works for some reason and start crawling towards the figure. WTFY? Vampire, is all my little brain can think. But I keep going towards it. Get to its feet, black out. Wake up next to the window. Scramble to the window just in time to see red, blue, white lights on a disc zooming out of the yard. Every time I think about it, it makes my eyes water, like I'm not supposed to think about it. Adult now, still want to know what the fuck happened to me. Eyes still water when thinking about it. Another story from childhood. Be me, I think I was 5. This was when we lived in the shack further back on the property. I was kind of a shitty 5 years old. Said something to my mom that made my dad mad. Dad refuses to talk to look at me for the whole night. Dad works as a nurse at a local hospital and is always on call. Gets a call at the dinner table and goes to work. Woken up in the middle of the night by my dad. Tells me to get my shoes on. Try to ask questions, get your shoes on, anon. Walks out of the room. Find dad outside my door. Takes me by the hand and leads me outside. It's pitch black. No idea of time. Leads me into the woods. Try to ask him questions, but he just shush me. Make it a ways in. Freaking out. JPG. Think about wolves, snakes, creepy crawly things in the night. Lets go of my hand. Follow the sound of footsteps. Can't even see my dad, just hear pine needles crunching. No idea of how much time passed. Find myself less scared by the time we loop back to the house. Don't see dad, but now I'm home. Go to bed and try to forget about it. Dad insists to this day that it never happened. I know it did. Another story from the property. Be me, I think about 10 at the time. This is after the house has been built. Like to go exploring in the woods with my dog. Having a good time. Gonna go back to the old house, the shack. A tree has fallen in the driveway that leads back to it, so I can't ride my bike. Dog is old. Sometimes likes to wander back to the new house to his favorite hole that he dug sometimes to lay down. I hang around and play with the ant lions under the old porch. Dog wanders back. Parents have an old trailer house on the property that they lived in before I was born while they were fixing up the shack. It's all sorts of messed up by this time. Hear a loud clunk sound behind me. I think it's just my dog messing with something. Hear it again. I realized it came from the old trailer about 30 yards away. Turn around and stand up. Start walking towards the trailer. Bad idea. JPG. I'm about 20 feet away when I see what looks like a giant rat hop up on top of the trailer. It looks like it's about 3 feet tall standing on its hind legs. Paralyzed with fear. It looks at me. I swear it had red eyes. Freak the fuck out and run all the way back to the new house without looking behind me for a second. Tell my parents. They don't believe me. Don't even give possible explanations, just say it was my imagination. Scared to go back in the woods for about 2 weeks, let alone go near that trailer for a very long time. I've since moved far away from the property, but my parents still live there. On that note, my parents lead me into the next story. Be me again. 5 once more. Quite a few of my stories take place when we were in the shack at the back of the property. Mom wakes me up in the middle of the night. Dad is missing. We get on clothes and shoes and walk the driveway up. Me, obviously scared because I'm young and it's dark in the woods. Mom uses a flashlight. That makes it a little better. We walk a lot, and it's deeply wooded. The trees hadn't been cut down yet to make a lot for the new house. Get to the end of the driveway where the gate is. It's about the length of 2 football fields, 200 yards, to get there. Dad is there. He is silent. Says helicopters came and men came down from the helicopters into the pasture across the road. WTF? Dad is visibly shaken. We walk back to the house and don't talk about it. In the morning Dad insists that he was awake and remembers everything. New development. Mom remembers being there with him. WTF? Mom, Dad, and myself all remember this one. Another. Be me. I think 4 at the time. In the shack house. I had a red metal railed bed. It was moved into the new house before I got my bunk bed. Mom tucks me in. I really liked the covers being tight when I was a kid. Feels good man.png. Look at the window. See blinking white lights. Lots of them. They make a filled circle. Fairies, is what my little brain screams. I don't know if I should be excited or scared. Struggle to get out of bed because the covers are tight. Run to tell Mom and Dad. Thank God I didn't see something I shouldn't have. I tell them I saw fairies. They say there is no such thing, it was probably lightning bugs. Mom tucks me back in and leaves the room. Feels good again. Look at the window because I'm still a little scared. Big mistake.gif. Fucking glowing white cow skull in my window. Freak the fuck out and slip out of the covers from the pillow end. Run to the parents' room. I'm gonna sleep with you tonight.
I don't really have an explanation as to what happened. I have ideas, but here is the story. I'm a freshly graduated high school student, and on my way to college. During my senior year I had a job working for my grandfather, as a farmhand. Well, more or less a farm manager. He would give me instructions on what to do to the farm without him being there, most commonly feeding the cows. It was early November, and at this moment in time baseball practice started after school and it would last from 3:25 to 5:30, and by that time the sun was almost down when I arrived at work and started getting ready. One day I had gotten dressed, filled up the buckets, and fed the first farm when I realized I didn't have a key to the other farm. Frustrated, I was forced to pick up 2 buckets at a time and walk them from the fence to the feed troughs, a good 40-yard walk. While walking I was trying to keep myself upbeat, and just started to whistle, no real pattern or tune but something that I came up with. And when I came back and put the last buckets in the bed of the truck, I heard something from my neighboring property. It was whistling. Strangely, I thought, no one lives anywhere near that property, and it sounded very close. I rationalized it as a mockingbird or something and went on with life. The next couple days, I didn't whistle, but the whistling continued, and slowly over those few days it got clearer and clearer until it just sounded like regular whistling, and eventually it got louder. When I had first heard it, it was very faint. I almost missed it over the crunching of me walking to my truck. The last few days in those few I kinda became accustomed to the whistling, and kinda expected it. And when one day it didn't come, I was a little disappointed. This time I had brought the key, and I walked up to the gate and started fiddling with my keys when I dropped them into the grass. I said damn it when I dropped them. I squatted down and started to search for them when I heard a very faint sound coming from the other property. A low groan, gurgle. And it was getting louder. At this point I wasn't scared but more curious as to what was going on over there. I left my truck parked across from the property and walked a few feet down the road and hopped the fence to the property. I heard the sounds. The land in there goes straight uphill and is heavily wooded all throughout, and the further you go up, the more and more dense it gets. Looking back now, I made a few big mistakes that could have gotten me hurt. As I walked up the hill, I would occasionally hear the gurgle. It was far up the hill, so still as faint as it was before. As I walked, a bad smell started to hit my nose, a weird mixture of garbage and wet dog or something. I heard something as I was about to crest the hill. Damn it. A very dry, low and quiet distorted damn it came from a couple yards in front of me. It sounded like a 60-year-old smoker said damn it really slowly, and I automatically thought someone was on our property. Somewhat angry and paranoid now, I started to move slower. I didn't want this guy to hear me before I could see them. I kept going, and I stopped and listened when I heard another sound. Damn it, damn it. This guy was slowly saying damn it normally, not long and drawn out in that eerie way as if he didn't know English. I sat down, on this log kinda listening, trying to figure what I should do about this person. He kept saying damn it over and over, and I noticed that his tone was getting higher, and his inflection was changing, and it hit me. This guy was perfectly mimicking me. My tone, inflection, literally everything. He even mimicked my frustration when I said it. Pissed and kinda scared now, I got up and started to crest the hill. I flicked on my flashlight on my phone. Hey, this is private property. I was cut off mid-sentence. As I came over the hill, the light barely illuminated a naked figure squatting just a couple yards in front of me. His eyes were illuminated by the faint glow of my flashlight. I automatically felt that something was wrong. This wasn't a regular person. His neck was longer than normal, and when I came up the hill, he winched his neck and snapped his head to look at me without moving. His eyes were too big, and his head was large and slender. He was squatted down in a ballerina-type squat. I looked at his body. He was very skinny, his ribs were showing through his skin. There was a short silence, and like a robot, the man turned in the leaves and slowly stood with his hands next to his side. I was debating on it if this was even a person. It was far too tall to be a person. Damn it, it said in my voice. I turned and I sprinted down the hill. It didn't feel like I was running, but more that my legs were just going through the motions. I didn't look back before I got to the fence, and when I hopped it, I got in my truck and sped away. Sadly, I still work at that farm, but I've never told anyone this story, not even my grandfather. I've only heard the whistling a few more times since then. I'm not really a believer in the paranormal, and I really try to find explanations for weird shit, and I believe that this was just a weird person, but I really don't know. Sorry for the wall of text, but I thought X would enjoy a personal experience.
Hello everyone. My name is Sam, and some weird ass shit has been happening to me. First, let me give some backstory. In 8th grade, my friends and I dug a huge 6-foot deep pit that we called the trench in a park across from my house. The park is mostly just woods and unkept plant growth. The property used to belong to a millionaire who lived in my city, and it used to be a really nice open park with paths and pine trees and shit, but she passed away in the 50s or something, and her family sold the land to the city, and the city has been too lazy to maintain what it used to be. So now there's a big wooded area in the middle of the neighborhood. Anyway, we dug this pit out of boredom, and it's been there for several years. We'd usually check up on it to see if it's still there and keep the hobos from sleeping in it. It was last year that we started to notice some weird shit surrounding the trench. One time we were just hanging out at my house, and at around 3 a.m. we went outside and ran to the trench just to check it out. We got there and heard rustling in the bushes. When we turned around to go back home, we all had this strange feeling that we were being watched. Now, we didn't think much of this because there's a ton of hobos in that park, but then things just got weirder. Deeper in the park, the trees and plants get denser and the hard ground turns into mush because there's a little bay right outside the trees. And my friends and I had been back there before, but we show up and there's a huge opening in the trees and the ground is normal like the ground near the edge of the woods by my house. Almost like something just came in, destroyed the trees, pounded down the ground and left. And there used to be 2 old wells in that same place and they're both gone. So that was weird, but like okay, there could just be some construction going on maybe. And I kid you not, after a year and a half of no one doing anything with that land, not a single plant has grown in the opening. And you might be thinking, how does this tie back to the trench? The same thing is happening where we dug the trench. There was no plants growing there. So that's all the backstory on all the supernatural shit that's been surrounding this trench and this park in general. But here's the main part of the story. Last Friday some friends and I were sitting on my front porch having a drink and chatting while a radio was playing on a table next to me. You know those severe thunderstorm warning alarms that sound like this? Well, the radio show we were listening to suddenly shifted to that warning, telling us that there was a severe thunderstorm in our area, even though it was perfectly clear outside. We thought that was the freakiest thing ever until we saw a fucking spotlight coming from the park across from my house. It was moving all over the place as if someone was using it. This is also freaky because it's almost midnight and no one is usually out in the park with a spotlight. Not only that, but after we turned off the radio, we could feel vibrations in the ground, as if there was an earthquake or something. One of my friends isn't scared of anything, so he jumps off the porch and runs straight into the woods towards the spotlight. We all follow. The further we get into the park, the more we start to realize that the spotlight is coming from the trench area. Soon before we arrive, the spotlight turns off, and it's pitch black. None of us grabbed our phones and we didn't have a flashlight, so we're just kind of standing there in the darkness. We found our way to the trench after our eyes adjusted to the darkness and saw that all the trees around the trench had been removed, and the trench was filled in. And you have to take into the consideration that the trench was at least 6 to 7 feet deep. It had been there for 4+ years and all the dirt that had been taken out of the ground had been packed into the ground, so there's no way someone could have filled it in that fast. So what the actual fuck? What the fuck is with the radio? What the fuck is with the spotlight? What the fuck is with the trench filling in? And what the fuck is with the forest randomly disappearing and plants not growing? Is this park cursed? The picture included is a view of the park from my front lawn.
I have no pictures or evidence, but I can provide a location. I was just reminded of this event when I reconnected with the friend of mine this happened with. Strap in for a short story that happened to me and my buddy a few years back. I used to work at a movie theater back in my early 20s and pretty much everyone there played airsoft. It was something even the managers got in on, and when you were newly hired you would typically be invited to a game. I had been working there for a while and attended all the games because it was fun as hell and we always had great locations to play in. We had a new guy come in named Ryan and he was already a big-time player and informed us we could use his uncle's property. It turned out to be an awesome location because there had been a large 2-story house built on the land that was mostly in ruins but still good to use and showed us pictures of it. Our manager thought it over and decided we would use the property for our next event despite knowing next to nothing about it. Everyone gets the address and we show up. First thing I notice, it's not actually, technically on the map. I used Verizon Navigator and it led me to a dirt road with an open fence and the area was heavily wooded. My buddy Corey and I had stayed up all night just because we were so hyped about the event and thought maybe our nav was wrong. We then saw 2 more cars go down the road, so we're like, fuck it, let's follow. The road is covered in mud, giant fucking reeds and weeds on both sides of us, and the road clearly hasn't been used in forever. We end up pulling to a clearing where the rest of the guys are. There's like 30 to 40 of us. We get out, unload and dress up in all our tactical gear, which is pretty heavy when you wear it long enough. Did I mention Texas? It was midsummer and the heat was easily around 100 degrees if not more. Turns out the house was fucking awesome. It had rotted away in a lot of areas and the wasps were really obnoxious, but otherwise a really fun place to play. No, nothing weird happened and we ended up taking a break around 12. It was blazing hot and I was dying of thirst, but thankfully we brought an assload of water. Break lasted about 30 minutes before we were back at it again. This time, I was outside the house, attacking the group inside. Corey wanted to take the long way around to this hill that would give us an advantage and better angle to shoot through the giant windows from above. Well, the trail we thought we were following turned out to be a creek bed, I guess, that lead nowhere. I'm not sure how you get lost in the woods, but we just kept going thinking we were heading back to the clearing, but that didn't happen either. Eventually we couldn't hear anyone or see anyone and we've got all this heavy ass gear on, but we just thought it was funny and laughed at our own autism. Eventually though we realized we might be in a lot of trouble because the area was unfamiliar and we really had no clue where we were. Hours passed. I was so thirsty I actually drank from a very small water source I found flowing where the creek had mostly dried up. I heard you shouldn't drink still water, so I guess it turned out okay, didn't get sick or anything. Anyways, so hours passed and all we could see was trees and carrying all that gear in the heat was destroying us. I knew there had to be a main road or any kind of neighborhood or something nearby, and yeah. Eventually our luck changed when we found a full-on neighborhood. I ran to the first house I saw, turned on their water hose and started drinking from it, same with Corey. It was almost instantly odd because there were exactly 0 cars despite the neighborhood being very plain looking. I forgot to mention, we left our phones in the car because we didn't want them to break or something stupid when playing. So no cars, no people that I could see, and even worse, the neighborhood was shaped like an oval with one road going around in a full circle about the entire neighborhood. You could even see the outline of it because the tree line never broke for a road to even exist. We walked the length of the neighborhood and went a full lap around it. About 40 or so houses were there, and eventually we knocked on some random person's door. Some elderly woman answered, again, looked normal, and we asked to use her phone. She actually told us she didn't have a phone. Okay, thank you. We moved to the next house, but she actually came outside and started watching us with this big weird smile. We knocked on the next door and it was another old lady and her husband. They didn't have a phone either. Both of them came outside and smiled at us, and at that point Corey, who was really freaked out, said we should leave. It was getting dark and I really didn't want to be in this creepy fucking Amish hell at night. It was only then that I noticed there were no power lines or poles for electricity. That is when I knew something was really fucked up about this place. We went to the next lane, not followed, and knocked on another door, and sure enough it was another elderly couple, and they obviously didn't have a phone either, and they started watching us too. Keep in mind these houses looked modern, not like barns or anything. We didn't want to be watched, so we went to the next block over, the last block near the tree line.
Please continue, dude. I'm into it.
I won't ignore trips, but there isn't much left to the story. Me and Corey basically skirted the wood line for the next hour, trying to avoid being seen by the people who lived there because it felt like they were being passive-aggressive. There was nothing remarkably paranormal about what was happening, but out of nowhere this dude comes from the woods and he's not exactly old, about late 30s maybe. He isn't smiling either, so we consider that a good sign. Corey did most of the talking when we were trying to get information, but no one really seemed to care about our questions. They just said they didn't have a phone and watched us until we went out of their line of sight. This guy, however, was an asshole. He kept asking where we had come from and who else was there. It was just Corey and I, but he made us follow him around the entire neighborhood like he was making sure no one else was there. I wanted to know where we were and what the fuck was going on in this prehistoric place, but he didn't really answer, just muttered to himself. When we finished going around the place, he asked us how many houses we went to and who all saw us. We told him the truth and asked again what the place was. He said it was a, and I quote, designation zone for people with severe schizophrenia, and that the houses had been built to sync with whatever delusion they were having. When questioned about power, he said it was a private project, and that he was contractually unable to say much else. He also stated that we should mind our own business and not go around telling people about the place, and that the people were very sick. I believe I actually found the location on Google Maps at one point in time, but it was just an empty lot where nothing was on it but an oval clearing with dirt. He didn't have a phone either, for the record, but led us to a tree marked with a camouflage band of masking tape and told us to follow the trees with tape. Corey and I followed them and ended up on a road that actually had cars where we could flag down help. We had to walk an additional 2 hours and ended up using a flashlight Corey had brought to keep in line with the tape. Even after we got to the main road, there were practically no cars and had to wait a long time before one showed up. It was dark by then. I never went back and never attempted to find the place again.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.